using the names and addresses of real registered voters.
All pages, and then I sign like Robert. And I get how much?
$3.
$3.
So you gonna go do this, they're gonna give you another $3. Then you gonna do somebody else, they're gonna give you another $3.
About 8 minutes in, O'Keefe, along with independent journalist Cam Higbee,
Wait, did you catch that? Operatives are literally handing out $3 bills on Skid Row in exchange for forged ballot signatures. You absolutely have to see how deep this federal investigation actually goes.
There's tremendous evidence. There's nothing but evidence. The election was rigged. It was a dirty election.
Mr.
And it's
President,
happening again right now in California.
Presented evidence.
It's happening
the
right now in California. Right now it's look at what's happening in California.
To that?
It's
the
4
Republicans
days.
are doing well in
California. No, they're not. They're dropping fast because it's a rigged election. Let me tell you, it's 4 days. And they aren't even close to coming up with it. You know why they're doing that? Because they're cheating on the election.
Do you have evidence to support that?
All I have to do is look. All I have to do is look.
That's not evidence.
And I listen. And I listen to people. And let's see what happens.
But, sir, that's not evidence.
Do you think it's appropriate?
That's how they count the votes in California.
Do you think it's appropriate that they have an election and 5 days later they're nowhere close to picking a winner?
State and local officials acknowledge they are slow. They're urging.
No, they're crooked.
They're urging the votes to be counted quickly. That's how they vote in California.
They're crooked, just like you're crooked. Your press is crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked.
To be fair, I'm not crooked, but let's
Really?
Let's
well,
continue.
You play right into their hands.
Let's continue.
You're either crooked or you're stupid. You play right into their hands with this rap. You know that these elections are rigged. Your network knows that they're rigged. You know that I won an election in a landslide, and I got 94% bad press.
But, Mr. President,
you know why I got that? Because you have no credibility.
Look at the sheer tension radiating off this exchange right here. The reporter tries to corner him on his election claims, and Trump instantly flips the entire script, calling the network completely crooked right to his face. Notice the absolute refusal to back down. He doesn't play the standard political defense. He goes strictly on the offensive. The media is entirely reliant on politicians craving their approval, but when someone completely rejects their framing, they honestly don't know how to handle it. You can actually see the reporter stutter slightly when he gets called stupid on national television. It's an absolute masterclass in narrative control. Instead of answering a loaded question, he attacks the premise of the question itself and the credibility of the person asking it. The underlying frustration here isn't just about this specific interview. It's about a system that takes 5 days to count ballots while the entire country watches in complete disbelief. It perfectly sets the stage for exactly why people are demanding these full-scale investigations in the first place.
Big one in the governor's race right now.
David and Colleen, we have seen so much movement in this race just within the last hour. Over 450,000 new votes coming in from across the state. Let's take a look. It has been enough to put Javier Becerra ahead of Steve Hilton, and then the Associated Press making the call that Javier Becerra will move on to the November runoff. We do not know yet who Becerra will face, but definitely a good evening for Javier Becerra. He's now in the lead at 26.7%, over 1,600,000 votes right now. And then right behind him still Steve Hilton. Not a lot separates them. Only 16,000 votes separates them. But it was enough to put Javier Becerra not just in the lead, but again, the Associated Press calling that Javier Becerra will move on to the November runoff. He will have to wait to see who he faces. David and Colleen.
Logic will tell you with only 16,000 votes between Becerra and Hilton, it seems like Hilton is very close to being called as well. Wouldn't you think that?
Yeah, we're seeing the check mark here. That's what we're going on. Check mark next to Javier Becerra. Associated Press making that decision. No check mark yet. Steve Hilton, Tom Steyer, still a ways to go. 352,000 votes is what he trails Javier Becerra.
Did you catch the sudden shift in tone from these news anchors? They are sitting there live on air, and suddenly a massive dump of 450,000 votes drops all at once. Watch their faces closely. They are trying desperately to maintain that professional, polished broadcast demeanor, but you can hear the absolute shock in their voices as a statewide race completely flips in a matter of seconds. Pay attention to how quickly the network makes the official call right after the dump. There is absolutely zero hesitation. This is exactly what drives the public completely insane. You watch a candidate lead for days, and then in the blink of an eye, a singular, massive data drop changes the entire trajectory of a government election. It feels incredibly disjointed. When massive statistical anomalies happen this incredibly fast, it naturally breeds intense suspicion. Whether it's standard procedure or not, the optics of this are absolutely terrible for anyone trying to maintain blind trust in the democratic process.
Visiting the addresses of the people connected to the names being used, including one resident who says that voter hasn't lived there for years.
I'm looking for a Vicky Walker. Is that?
Doesn't live here. I bought this house nearly 9 years ago.
Okay.
The only reason I know that name is because we still get her mail.
What's captured in the video appearing to violate multiple California felony statutes, including Elections Code 18613, signing another person's name to a petition, and Penal Code 470, forgery of signatures. O'Keefe saying the footage also showing Higbee and members of his team being assaulted.
Now watch what happens when investigative journalists actually do the legwork the mainstream media completely ignores. They take the exact names being forged on Skid Row and knock on the actual residential doors. Look at the homeowners' absolute confusion when they realize someone is using an old tenant's name from almost a decade ago. This completely destroys the narrative that voter rolls are perfectly clean and strictly monitored. It proves that operatives know exactly which inactive names to target and exploit. The sheer audacity to run a factory of fake signatures using society's most vulnerable people for $3 a pop is incredibly dark. Notice the sheer disbelief of the resident. They are holding mail for a ghost voter that is actively being weaponized to sway public policy. When you realize that this is just one door out of potentially thousands, you start to see the massive scale of the vulnerability. You cannot have a secure system when decades-old data is actively being mined by street-level operatives.
The President of the United States said that there's cheating going on in California. Do you have any evidence that there is cheating going on in California? Certainly cheating big enough to turn the outcome of one of these elections.
Well, those are two very different questions. Absolutely, there is evidence that people are cheating, 100%. We have multiple investigations into people who are voted who should not have voted.
Are there any people in particular? Are you bringing any?
There will be charges. I'm not prepared to announce them yet, but we do have open investigations into voter fraud. There's no question that there's voter fraud in California. We just prosecuted and announced charges against one individual about a month ago who was registering homeless people to vote in downtown LA. She was paying them to register at false addresses to vote. So there's no question there's voter fraud. The question that you said is very important. Is it widespread? Will it affect an outcome of election? We don't know. The system is not designed to detect or prevent fraud. The system sucks.
Listen very carefully to what this U.S. attorney is admitting right here on camera. This isn't some random internet rumor. This is a top-level federal prosecutor confirming they just charged someone for paying homeless people in downtown LA to register at fake addresses. Notice how matter-of-fact he is about it? He explicitly states that the system completely sucks and isn't designed to detect or prevent fraud. That is a devastating admission from the very people in charge of the justice system. The interviewer tries to ask if the cheating is widespread enough to flip an election, and the prosecutor basically says, "We have no idea because the system is completely broken." That is the exact opposite of what voters want to hear. When the authorities openly confess that their safeguards are basically non-existent, it completely validates every single skeptic who has been questioning these late-night ballot dumps. It's absolutely wild to hear the quiet part said out loud like this on a major mainstream broadcast.
2019, I was at the White House and Trump told me to stand up, and I'm grateful for his moral support. But I think what we really need is for someone to get arrested immediately. That has to happen. And if it doesn't happen, I'm not, speaking personally, I'm not sure why I would continue doing what I do at all.
Check out the sheer frustration on his face during this live hit. The journalist who actually captured the undercover Skid Row footage is being asked about the impact of his work, and he completely cuts through the political noise. He says moral support is great, But what actually matters is people getting arrested immediately. Notice his body language? He is exhausted by the bureaucratic theater. When you literally hand the authorities high-definition footage of felonies being committed, the expectation is swift justice, not endless public relations statements. He even admits that if massive legal action doesn't follow, there is almost no point in doing the dangerous undercover work in the first place. It highlights the massive disconnect between investigative exposure and actual government accountability. You can expose the absolute worst corruption on camera, but if the prosecutors refuse to move aggressively, the machine just keeps turning. It is an incredibly sobering reality check about how the legal system actually operates behind closed doors.
See what happens.
But, sir, that's not evidence.
Do you think it's appropriate?
That's how they count the votes in
Do you
California.
think it's appropriate that they have an election and 5 days later they're nowhere close to picking a winner?
State and local officials acknowledge they are slow. They're urging.
No, they're crooked.
They're urging the votes to be counted quickly. That's how they vote in California.
They're crooked, just like you're crooked. Your press is crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked.
To be fair, I'm not crooked, but let's
Really?
Let's
Well,
continue.
you play right into their hands.
Let's continue.
You're either crooked.
Let's rewind that Trump interview for a second, because this specific exchange perfectly highlights the massive divide in how we view election integrity. The reporter attempts to normalize the chaos by claiming local officials acknowledge they are just slow. Watch Trump's immediate reaction. He entirely rejects that framing, immediately cutting him off to say they are crooked. This is a battle over the baseline definition of reality. The media wants to frame taking 5 days to count ballots as an unfortunate bureaucratic inefficiency. Trump is framing it as an intentional smokescreen for cheating. Notice how the reporter uses the phrase, "to be fair." It's a classic broadcast tactic to sound objective while strictly defending the establishment narrative. But when a massive logistical failure happens over and over again with absolutely zero consequences or structural improvements, people naturally stop believing it's just incompetence. They start believing it's a feature of the system, not a bug. And that is exactly the sentiment being weaponized right here on camera.
Is there a batch of votes in LA County in which Spencer Pratt received no votes and Karen Bass and Nithya Raman received thousands? That's the speculation of a lot of folks online since Tuesday's primary elections in Los Angeles. It was prompted by some updated figures on media websites, including the Times website, that suggested there was such an update. I dove into it. A lot of people have been speculating that it's evidence of fraud. Even Elon Musk tweeted about it. But speaking with the Associated Press, which collects data from LA County and feeds it out to various media outlets around the country, including the Times, it was the result of a lag in an automated collection of the data, in which there was one data collection that captured votes in a single batch of votes for Bass and Raman. And then about 1 minute later, the collection of the rest of that same batch of votes, including a bunch of votes for Pratt and none for Bass and Raman, which is to say that there was, for about a minute, updated figures on media websites that showed that there was a batch of new votes for Bass and Raman and none for Pratt.
Check out this incredible attempt at mainstream damage control. A candidate somehow receives exactly 0 votes in an official batch update, while their opponents get thousands. The internet naturally explodes, and the response is to just brush it off as an automated lag in data collection. Pay attention to the language the reporter uses. It's extremely technical and passive, perfectly designed to bore the viewer into just accepting it and moving on. But think about the underlying infrastructure here. If the automated data collection can glitch this wildly and display entirely false numbers to the entire country, how can anyone be absolutely certain about the final tally? This is exactly why total transparency is so critical. You simply cannot tell the public, "Oops, it was a technical glitch," when the stakes are this astronomically high, and expect everyone to quietly go back to sleep. It just adds another massive layer of toxic doubt onto a system that is already cracking under the immense pressure of public scrutiny. Are we just looking at massive system glitches, or is there something much deeper going on? Drop your theories below, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next breakdown.